All right, ladies and gentlemen, doing a new shading today. I've got my picture obviously to the left over here. I've got my drawing. You can see I found the edges of the things that I needed to draw. A couple little edges there, obviously a big one there. And now it's time for me to start doing my shading. So no matter what picture you have and what part of the face you're doing, every single one of you should be starting off by erasing your grid. The grid is not going to be part of our drawing. And we don't really want to, don't really want to make that checker box thing be through the entire picture. So make sure that we're erasing our grid. It's okay if you could still see it a little bit, all right? But for the most part, we want to make it really, really light. Now, I mentioned this yesterday, and I'll say it again. If you're working and you're a righty, well, I would work in the same way that you write on a piece of paper, from top to bottom and left to right. Now, if you're a lefty, you can obviously work the opposite direction, from right to left, top to bottom. The idea here is that I don't drag my hand over areas that I've already done. So for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working in that top left area. Obviously, the leftmost part of my picture is all basically white, so I'm going to leave that untouched. But from here, I'm going to start working this way. Now, I can always come back and make things darker. Always an option over there. So when I'm working, if I'm going to make a mistake, I'll make it that I went a little bit too light. But for the most part, this outside portion of, I'll just tell you, is the cheek of the face. That seems to be one of the darkest areas in this picture. It starts getting a little bit lighter as you get towards the middle. And the important thing I want you to understand and notice about the way I'm shading is I'm trying to put it on the paper as evenly as possible. You can see that I'm using the pencil close to being on its side. That helps me get a little more surface area on the paper. And in all honesty, it really makes getting even shading on the paper a lot easier. The other thing that I've figured out over my years of doing all this is that if I hold the pencil all the way down here, I can't help but press down really, really hard. And for me, I always had a problem with making my drawings really, really dark and really sloppy. So over the years, I had to kind of learn how to control myself, how to control the pencil a little bit better, and learn how to not smudge my work. So part of that was not putting my hand down on work that I already did. The other part was not squeezing the pencil so hard. It's hard to make light, even shading when you're really squeezing on the pencil. As I'm working over here, my idea is that I want to try to make this look good enough that I would never need to blend it. And what I mean by blend it, I mean by using my finger to smudge it. If I work evenly enough and carefully enough, it should look pretty close to what's going on in the picture without the blending. The blending is just going to be like an extra stage, an extra step to really kind of make it work really well. And you can see as I get out over here, I'm going lighter and lighter and lighter. There's no way I'm going to get this thing done with one full pass through it. I'm going to need to work on it for a little while and then come back to it. Now, before I go into this bottom section, because I'm going to put my hand down over here to rework this, I'm going to start blending. So I shaded a lot going like one direction. When I blend, I'm going to use my fingertip and I'm going to change directions often. I want to go up and down, left and right, and alter it a lot. The more different directions you go in, generally the smoother it will be. And you'll find that some of the areas might get even a little bit darker. You'll pick up a little bit of the pencil graphite on your finger, and that'll be helpful sometimes in blending and making some of those light shades of gray. I don't want you to work box to box. I don't want you to work section by section. Again, I don't want the end result of this thing to look like it's just like puzzle pieces that go together. What I want to see is I want to see that it kind of flows as one big drawing and not just a collection of 4 smaller drawings. So what I've done right now is I've sort of started to blend it. I've smoothed a lot of those areas out the best I could. And again, if you put them down really rough, they're going to stay really rough. But I realized after blending it, I probably need to make things a little bit darker. So that's what I'm going to come back. Just add another layer of shading. And again, I would always prefer, if you make a mistake, that you made your drawing a little bit too light, than pressing down really, really hard and making this thing like jet black right off the bat. This edge over here is the darkest part, really, of this side of the face. I'm just going to add a little bit extra graphite. And then as I work my way across, I'm starting to press lighter and lighter. Now, don't be mistaken, I've done this a lot, and I've been drawing longer than you've been alive. So, you can assume I'm going to be a little quicker at it and a little bit more precise. You should take your time. I'm going to give you guys a lot of time in class for this. In all honesty, probably the whole rest of the week, whether I'm absent or not, you're going to get most of that time in there. And as I'm not going to rush you, I am going to, at some point want to wrap this all up. But again, I think that giving you 3 or 4 uninterrupted class sessions should be a lot of time to do this. I've made stuff a little bit darker. I'm going to go ahead and blend that stuff in. I'll tell you, my drawing looks a little bit darker in real life than it does on the computer screen. So for those of you who are watching and following at home, just keep that in mind. Biggest thing I want to do is I want to kind of keep the light areas in the picture. Up here it should be just, I think, a little bit darker, so I'm going to add just a little bit more pencil lead. Spots just like right here. And dark. And don't worry about going outside the edges on the tops and the bottoms. Really not a big deal. This area tends to be the brightest. And now I'm going to work on this part of the nostril, this part of the nose. The edge of that is really dark. So I'm going to come in here, start with a little bit of gray. This area over here is the nostril. It is obviously the only place in my picture, in this particular picture, that is like jet black. Not black all the way through, and you don't want to necessarily make it look like a black circle in the middle of this picture. But this is an area I'm going to press down just a little bit harder and give a little extra push to. Even though it's all really dark, I'm going to add a little bit of blending in there. And as it works its way to the outside part of the nostril, you see it gets a little bit lighter. A little bit of whiteness over here, so I'm going to avoid that. But there is a little dark edge underneath here, a little crease. Put a little bit more over there. Blend some of what I just did in. And then now I'm working on this bottom section. So you see I've worked bottom to top. Again, excuse the fact that my drawing looks lighter on the screen than it actually is. Has a lot to do with the camera that I'm using, and there are no lights on in the room, so it's extra sort of sensitive. But I wanted you guys to kind of get a feel for that. And then I've got this bottom section over here underneath the nose. It's part of the upper lip. That all has another level of gray on it, so I'm going to just work on through that. This is not quite finished. It is not quite dark enough, and I could go over the entire thing again, but this is basically in the ballpark of what we're trying to do. So again, what I'll reiterate is don't rush. You get no extra points for having it done quickly. You get points for having it done correctly. Again, I'm going to make my little circles change directions every time I blend. I try to, avoid going exactly the same way as the pencil is going. And once you blend, you can always come back and make some stuff a little bit darker. Alright guys, I'm not going to lie to you, it's not totally finished, but I feel relatively decent about that. Or that it's close at least. That's really what it looks like in real life. And I'll just add a little bit more work to it before I end this video. But the major things to keep in mind is erase your grid lines, work top to bottom. Once you're done blending, add a little bit more value to make it a little bit darker. And then you should be good. And if you followed all those steps and everything else like that, you're going to have a piece that's going to fit in very nicely with the whole thing like a perfect little jigsaw puzzle. And we're going to be able to create a larger portrait.